Hello, my name is David Önaç, and I'm a composer and pianist based in Manchester in the UK. And I'm going to talk to you today about my new piece for the Grade 5 ABRSM piano syllabus. It's called A Distant Star in the Stillness, and it's the C3 piece. And the first thing I want to talk about is stars. So stars were a big part of the inspiration for this piece, and I love how they're these massive balls of fire, hundreds and hundreds of millions of miles away, really, really powerful. And I've tried to convey my enthusiasm for stars in this piece. So one way I try to do that is through the use of register. Now, register is how high or how low something is. So you'll notice that right at the start of the piece, the right hand goes way up to the top of the piano here. And in other parts of the piece, for example, bar 11, the hands move right to the lowest part of the piano. So that's high register and low register. And because physically we have to move from the highest to the lowest part of the piano, I'm hoping that that helps to convey this sense of vast distances, how far these stars are away from us. I also really like the low register of the piano because of its resonance. So these low notes have a lot of power and a lot of resonance, and I hope that helps people to think about how powerful these stars are, so powerful that they're engines for our solar systems. And I also love looking up at the stars and seeing that there are these twinkly points of light in the night sky. And every time you go out, they're still there every evening. And some of them are like fixed points in the night sky. So the North Star stays in the same place from our perspective. And one of the things that might help people who are learning this piece is that the really high notes stay in exactly the same place. So I know that there's a fair amount of moving around from low to middle to high register. But in terms of the high register, I was very careful when I wrote this piece to keep that G and D in exactly the same place every time. So that's partly about stars being fixed points in the night sky, but that's also practical, and it helps if your hand knows that it's always going to that same place at the top of the piano. The second thing I'd like to talk about is chords. So I really, really love rich, resonant chords. And you'll notice that from bar 15, for example, there are lots of rich chords which have 5 or 6 different notes in them. Now this comes from my love of jazz and gospel, and if I improvise in that style, you'll hear the similarity between the chords that I improvise and the chords that I've just played from my piece. So if I now play bar 15, you can hear that it's the same kind of resonant, full, rich harmony. And that comes from when I was younger. I grew up in the Caribbean, so I was born in Jamaica and spent a lot of time in the Bahamas, and a lot of what I heard musically growing up was classical, but a lot of it was also jazz and gospel. And I remember I used to love listening to these amazing jazz and gospel pianists playing these really rich chords, and I used to try and go to the piano and work out what exactly those chords were. So that's something that stayed with me for the rest of my life, and I love those really, really rich chords. So I hope you enjoy them too, And sometimes when they're in combination with the low and high register, that means we can get these really big chords that go right across the whole piano. So one example of that is when we have the low C and G in bar 11, followed by, it's got that lovely resonant sound in the middle, and then the highest notes as well, that recurring G and D. And I love listening to all of those sounds resonate together on the pedal, and I hope that you enjoy playing them as well. In terms of something to help you play the piece, when you're building up these really big chords, just be careful that everything is really nicely balanced. So I know that these lowest notes are on very big strings and are very powerful, so it's possible that I might overpower everything else with those low notes. So while it's good to enjoy those low notes, we don't want to overpower the rest of what's happening. For example, that might be a bit too loud in the low register, whereas this is a bit better balanced because I'm really listening to make sure that the middle register is speaking loudly enough to balance what's happening in the low register, and also to leave room for what's in the highest register. So be really careful when there are these very, very big chords which are built up from the lowest to the middle to the high register, that you can hear everything and that everything is balanced.